Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that the most powerful economy on Earth has just bounced a check. Not to a utility company or a landlord, but to the entire world. That's not science fiction. That's what happens if the United States defaults on its debt. And right now, we're closer to that nightmare scenario than most people realize. Welcome to Forgotten Finance, where lost money lessons come back to life. Today, we're diving into one of the most dangerous yet misunderstood concepts in global economics. What actually happens when America can't pay its bills? The debt ceiling is back in the headlines. After being suspended in 2023, it was reinstated on January 2, 2025, at a staggering $36.1 trillion. Think about that number, $36 trillion. That's more than the entire economy of China, Japan, and Germany combined. And Congress is once again playing a high-stakes game of chicken with the global economy. Here's what most people get wrong. The debt ceiling isn't about future spending. It's about paying bills we've already racked up. Congress already approved this spending. They already passed the budgets. The debt ceiling just determines whether we're allowed to borrow money to pay for what we've already committed to. It's like maxing out your credit card, then refusing to increase your limit while still expecting to pay your mortgage. The math doesn't work. So what happens when we hit this limit? First, the Treasury Department pulls out what they call extraordinary measures. It sounds dramatic because it is. These are accounting maneuvers that temporarily free up cash by shuffling money between government accounts, like raiding federal employee pension funds or pausing investments in certain securities. It's the financial equivalent of checking your couch cushions for spare change, except the couch is worth hundreds of billions of dollars. The Government Accountability Office reported in December 2024 that even these extraordinary measures, combined with roughly $700 billion in cash on hand, will only buy us a few months. Experts estimate we'll hit the X date, that's the day when the money actually runs out, sometime between June and August of 2025. That's when things get catastrophic. Let me paint you a picture of what default actually means. Social Security checks stop. Medicare payments freeze. Military salaries vanish. Tax refunds disappear. And interest payments to bondholders, the people who lent us money, those stop too. U.S. Treasury securities have been considered the safest investment on the planet for decades. They're the bedrock of the global financial system. Pension funds hold them. Foreign governments hold them. Your retirement account probably holds them. They're called risk-free assets for a reason. But the moment the United States says we can't honor these obligations, that entire foundation crumbles. Financial markets would spiral into chaos almost immediately. The stock market would likely crash as investors panic and flee to safety, except there would be no safety anymore, because the safest asset in the world just failed. A Brookings Institution analysis found that default and the resulting harm to Treasury market stability could cost more than $750 billion in increased interest payments over just one decade. That's $750 billion in extra costs, paid by taxpayers, all because we played political games with the debt ceiling. Interest rates would skyrocket across the board. When the government has to pay more to borrow money, everyone else does too. Mortgages become more expensive. Car loans get pricier. Credit card rates climb even higher. Small businesses can't afford to expand. The entire economy grinds toward recession, potentially depression. Here's the truly insidious part. We don't even have to default for the damage to happen. Just getting close causes harm. During the 2011 debt ceiling crisis, when lawmakers brought the country to the brink, Standard & Poor's downgraded America's credit rating for the first time in history. Fitch did the same thing in 2023 after another showdown. These downgrades send a message to the world. America might not be reliable anymore. And that perception alone costs us billions. The 2023 crisis provides a perfect case study in financial brinksmanship. As the deadline approached, Treasury sold $50 billion worth of 4-week securities at a record 5.84% yield, the highest rate since 2000. That's the cost of waiting until the last minute. That's the price of treating the debt ceiling like a political bargaining chip instead of what it is, a mechanism to prevent economic catastrophe. And here's what really should keep you up at night. The United States has never actually defaulted in modern history. We came close in 1979 due to technical glitches at the Treasury Department, but that was resolved in days. We've never systematically refused to pay our debts. Never. But that perfect record means we have no roadmap for what comes next if we actually cross that line. Economists use words like catastrophic, devastating, and unprecedented when describing what default would look like. This isn't hyperbole. The Government Accountability Office stated plainly that the current debt ceiling process exposes the country to an unnecessary risk of default with potentially severe consequences for financial markets, the economy, and America's global standing. Some politicians argue that we could prioritize payments, maybe pay bondholders first and delay other obligations. The GAO debunked this fantasy. There's no safe way to manage a default. The Treasury Department's payment systems aren't designed to pick and choose which bills to pay. Even attempting selective payment would create chaos, legal challenges, and massive uncertainty. Let's talk about the global implications. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency. Countries around the world hold dollars and Treasury securities as their primary reserves. International trade largely happens in dollars. Oil is priced in dollars. This status gives America enormous economic power and advantages, but it's built on trust that the dollar is stable and that U.S. debt is safe. Default would shatter that trust instantly. Foreign governments and investors would start looking for alternatives, maybe the euro, maybe a basket of currencies, maybe even digital currencies. Losing reserve currency status would be an economic earthquake with aftershocks lasting generations. It would make everything more expensive for Americans and reduce our ability to influence global economics and politics. Here's the bitter irony. The debt ceiling doesn't actually control spending or deficits. The Congressional Budget Office has stated explicitly that setting a limit on debt cannot control deficits because the spending decisions are made through other legislation long before we hit the ceiling. By the time we're debating whether to raise it, it's too late. The money's already been spent. The obligations already exist. If lawmakers want to reduce deficits, they need to do that when they're actually passing spending bills and tax laws, not by holding the debt ceiling hostage. Every expert, from the GAO to the Congressional Budget Office to independent economists, agrees on this point. Yet here we are, again, playing Russian roulette with the global economy. So where does this leave us? As of now, Congress needs to act before the X date arrives this summer. The clock is ticking. The consequences of inaction are not theoretical. They're not abstract economic concepts. They're real harm to real people. Job losses, destroyed savings, a potential recession that could dwarf anything we've seen since the Great Depression. The lesson that keeps getting forgotten is simple. The debt ceiling is not a tool for fiscal responsibility. It's a relic of a different era that now serves primarily as a vehicle for political hostage-taking. The spending decisions have already been made. Raising the ceiling just lets us pay for what we've already bought. America's full faith and credit has been the cornerstone of global finance for nearly a century. Destroying that reputation to score political points isn't brave or fiscally responsible. It's reckless, it's dangerous, and it's a money lesson we can't afford to forget. Until next time, this is Forgotten Finance, where lost money lessons come back to life. Don't let this one become another forgotten disaster.